The incredible transformation of triplets that shocked their billionaire dad. The attic smelled of dust and lost memories, concealing secrets that could break the chains binding Jake, Emma, and Lucas to their father's expectations. "We can't just keep drifting through life, waiting for his approval," Jake murmured, his hands trembling slightly as he traced an old chest. Emma shared his unease, her paintbrush still in midair, marred with unfulfilled potential. Lucas, leaning against a weathered beam, swallowed hard, grappling with the suffocating weight of their father's dismissal. Jake had spent countless nights working on inventions meant to beautify existences, tools that could simplify the mundane. Each time he dared to dream aloud, Edward would crush his ideas, labeling them childish whims. His hands clenched into fists as he felt the familiar sting of rejection deep down. What if this attic held the key to their escape from their father's scrutiny? Rummaging through faded family relics, they uncovered a crumpled letter filled with their late grandmother's hopes and dreams, a neglected community arts center left to them. Could this be their lifeline? The prospect ignited a flicker of excitement within Jake, but doubt nibbled at the edges of his heart. Would their father view this as just another distraction, burying them deeper in his empire's shadow? "What if we do this together?" Emma's voice sliced through Lucas's spiraling thoughts. He looked at her, eyes wide with fear and longing. It seemed like a way out, a chance to nurture their talents. But there lay an ever-growing chasm between their immediate desires and Edward's expectations, one they feared to confront. Before they could fully process this revelation, the world shifted as thunder rumbled outside, a reflection of the tension brewing within. Jake flinched, aware that their shared dream hung in balance, fragile like the raindrops sliding down the attic window. He could almost hear his father's scoffs echo in his mind, a cruel reminder that success, in Edward's eyes, was only measured in monetary achievements. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As thunder cracked again, a sense of urgency mounted, their hearts racing at the thought of what lay ahead. They huddled together, each breathing in the conviction that swelled between them. What if their father discovered this place? What would he do to their dream? Would he relish in the chance to squash their ambitions like a bug under his luxury loafers? "I'm terrified," Lucas finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Haunted by years of invisibility. If they pursued this, everything could crumble, including the remnants of their fragile self-worth. Yet the room thrummed with the anticipation of potential. This was a shot at defining who they truly were, far removed from Edward's grip. Then a loud crash erupted from below, shaking the floorboards beneath them. Panic surged as their hearts raced, and with it came a chilling realization. The sanctuary they just discovered could be in peril. Would this sound herald an end before they'd even begun? Or perhaps a moment that would irrevocably change their dynamics with Edward? The uncertainty gnawed at them as they held their breath, ready to confront what lay ahead. The sound echoed ominously, an intrusion that shattered the delicate bubble of aspiration the triplets had spun. Jake's mind raced with possibilities, each darker than the last. Had Edward come home early, or had one of his relentless business associates found their secret? What would happen if they confronted their father, armed with nothing but hope and a letter from the past? A cold wave of dread settled over him. "We need to see what that was," he said, his voice trembling. Even as he spoke, Jake felt a sense of determination bubbling beneath his fear. They had to search out whatever chaos lurked below, to seize control of the situation before it spiraled out of grasp. "Are you sure?" Emma whispered, her brows knitted together. The apprehension in her eyes mirrored Lucas's fear-laden expression. Despite their dread, Jake could sense a latent energy between them, a bonding force that had always been present, but now shimmered with possibility. This was their moment, the one where they could either retreat into the safety of their father's shadow or take a chance at carving out their own existence. With a deep breath, Jake straightened his spine and gestured for his siblings to follow. Together, he stated firmly, feeling the weight of his grandmother's hopes and dreams in his hands. They descended the creaking stairs, the rickety banister a metaphor for their shaky resolve. Each step down whispered doubts into their ears, but they pressed on, driven by an ember of ambition, stoked by a shared purpose. The living room lay before them in chaotic disarray. A shelf had toppled, sending thick, leather-bound books sprawled across the floor. Jake's heart sank at the sight, but his eyes were drawn to a figure standing rigid by the shattered remnants of their past. Edward loomed like a thundercloud, the air around him charged with disappointment. "Look at this mess," he barked, his voice seething with frustration. "You three can't even maintain order in your own home." His gaze swept over them, dissecting their timid stances, as if he could sense the storm of emotions roiling beneath their surfaces. It was a power play, one that Jake had seen many times before. But today, amidst their father's fury, they could either shrink or stand their ground. "Dad," Jake began, his voice steadier than he felt. "This isn't just a mess, it's a sign." "A sign?" Edward echoed, a sardonic smile creeping onto his lips. "A sign that you're still incapable of taking this seriously?" "No," Jake pressed, a gust of courage flowing through him. "It's a sign that we've been living under your expectations for too long. We found something important in the attic." "Enough with your childish whims," Edward interrupted. But as he spoke, Jake felt a spark ignite within him. His heart hammered, not with fear, but with a newfound determination to claim his right to be heard. In that moment, both his siblings shared a glance, one filled with silent agreement. They would not be silenced any longer. Jake's palms were still clammy, but as he met his father's sharp gaze, he understood something vital. Their dreams, their talents, deserved a voice in this world. "We want to honor Grandma's dreams," Emma declared, her little voice quaking, yet powerful enough to demand attention. "That old woman's fantasies have no place here," Edward shot back, anger tinged with disbelief. The intensity of the moment clutched at Jake's heart. But as thunder rolled again, it felt more like a reassurance than an omen. They had crossed a threshold. Now it was time for a reckoning. As silence enveloped them, a realization caught in the throat of their arrogance. The triplets stood united, defiant. Would this confrontation rupture the chains binding them, or would it solidify their entrapment? The air sparkled with tension, the outcome hanging precariously in the balance. Jake glanced at his siblings, sensing that the time had come to reveal their collective vision. Would they embrace their grandmother's dreams, cementing their own destinies, or would they stand down again, ceding power to their father's tyranny? The atmosphere crackled, the choice looming before them like a ravenous beast waiting for its next meal. With the stakes now at an all-time high, they had to decide. Who would they really become? Before Jake could argue further, Edward's hand shot up, halting the confrontation in its tracks. "You think I'm going to let some childish fantasy dictate our family?" he growled, his voice low and threatening. The shadows deepened around his features, as if he were trying to absorb any light left in the room. But Jake felt an unfamiliar fire stirring within him, a swirling mixture of fear and empowerment. This was no longer just about books in the living room or the remnants of their grandmother's dreams. It was about their very identities, their futures. "It's not childish, Dad," Jake insisted, tone unwavering. "It's about what we can build together." Emma took a tentative step forward, her resolve solidifying under the weight of their father's seething scrutiny. We've been living in this house, this shadow, for too long. It's suffocating, and we deserve more. Grandma wanted us to chase our passions, not stifle them." Lucas glanced at his siblings, emboldened by their words. "We can't keep pretending everything."
"It's okay, just because it's easier for you. It's time for us to act on what we've discovered." The silence that followed was electric, fraught with possibilities and uncertainty. Jake could feel the air thicken around them, heavy with the weight of expectations and unfulfilled aspirations. He had never seen his father so unmoored. His eyes darted, a rare flicker of vulnerability visible. "What do you think you can do that I haven't already built for you?" Edward spat. But Jake sensed the cracks in his father's armor, the small tremors that spoke of fear masked as anger. "We can create something real," Jake replied, the words pouring out now with clarity. "Something that's ours. We want to start a project, something with purpose, a small business inspired by Grandma's community plans. We want to bring her dreams to life in some way." For a heartbeat, Edward's expression shifted, caught between surprise and disdain. "And what makes you believe you can succeed where others have failed? You have no experience, no training." Jake stepped forward, his heart pounding. "But this is ours. We have each other, and isn't that the most important part? We're willing to learn, to fight for it." The room grew still as the tension stretched taut like a wire. Jake could feel the adrenaline coursing through him, igniting the thoughts swirling in his mind. Could they really do this? The thought lingered, powerful. He took another step, the distance between him and Edward narrowing. "You always wanted us to be successful, right? But you've defined that success for us. It's time for us to define it on our own terms." A sharp intake of breath from Emma caught Jake's attention, and he knew she was with him. Lucas stood resolute, ready to support their shared vision. Edward's hardened stare softened for just a moment, then hardened again. "You think you can turn dreams into reality? You're just kids playing at being adults." But this time, the challenge went unanswered. Instead, Jake's thoughts crystallized. They were not just kids anymore. They were growing into their own beings with ideas worth exploring, and they needed to grasp their destinies to break free from their father's heavy mantle. With renewed urgency, Jake turned to his siblings. "We need a plan. We need to show him what we're capable of doing, starting now." The seed of ambition had been planted, and sanctifying that shared determination began to take root. They whispered, huddling together, as their minds spun with ideas and possibilities. Maybe they would research, create drafts, pull resources from online communities. The methods were endless. But then came the ominous thought that broke Jake's newfound determination. What if failure was lurking just ahead, waiting to derail their dreams? As he caught Edward's eye, something inside Jake clenched, pressing the reality of his father's relentless skepticism against the pulse of hope coursing within him. With the future ambivalent, Jake silently vowed to harness their heritage, their grandmother's dreams, into tangible action, even if meant facing the unpredictable wrath of their father again. In that flickering moment of uncertain resolve, he realized the battle had only just begun. They had ignited a spark, but whether it would illuminate their path forward or be extinguished by the gale of disbelief remained unanswered. "Next move," Jake murmured, drawing his siblings closer. "We'll show him what it means to fight for our dreams." As the door creaked open, words hung in the air. Who would stand against them next, and what personal hurdles awaited them on this road to self-actualization? The following days unfolded with a palpable tension, a precarious balance between hope and doubt within their tightly knit unit. Jake sat at his desk, surrounded by papers filled with ideas, concepts, and budgets hastily scribbled down. The weight of his father's words loomed over him, a constant reminder of the uncertainty that lay ahead.
With Emma and Lucas committed to the vision, Jake began to unearth a part of himself that had long been dormant. He realized he had not only inherited their grandmother's dreams, but also her unyielding spirit. They needed to decide on a specific direction for their project. Jake felt adrenaline rush through him every time he envisioned their business taking flight. But the specter of failure haunted those dreams, coaxing his insecurities to the forefront. "Let's focus on what Grandma wanted, something communal," Jake proposed, eyes bright with enthusiasm. "We can build a small community hub, maybe a café that offers workshops and classes. It could be a space for creativity and connection." Emma nodded. "I like that. We can source local talent for the workshops, promote local art. That could give us the authenticity we need." Lucas leaned back in his chair, mulling over his siblings' words. "But how do we finance this? I mean, we can't just jump in without a plan." Realism tethered their enthusiasm, yet Jake was grateful for it. "We start small. We could do a crowdfunding campaign. It's not just about the money, it's about gathering a community around the idea." For several hours they brainstormed, each bubbling over with ideas, feeding off one another's excitement. Jake could feel his confidence blooming as every suggestion solidified their resolve. He even began sketching a rough layout of the café, placing their grandmother's portrait prominently in the center, a symbol of where they had come from and all they aspired to achieve. But as dusk approached, Jake's momentum wavered. A gnawing doubt crept into the corners of his mind, seeded by Edward's disbelief. They were treading untested waters, and what if they sank under the weight of reality? "Do you really think that will back off?" Lucas broke the silence, his brow furrowed with concern. "He's always been so adamant about what we should do. What if he tries to shut this down?" Jake's heart sank, then surged back with determination. "This isn't up to him. It's ours to build, ours to defend. We need to prove to him, to ourselves, that we can make this a reality. We owe it to Grandma." The gravity of their task began to weigh heavily. Jake wasn't just challenging their father, he was confronting a lifetime of ingrained expectations and familial history. He had to cultivate not only a business, but also their self-worth, the kind that transcended their father's narrow view of success. "Maybe we should practice our pitch," Emma suggested, her voice steady. "Let's really prepare ourselves for when we show him." The siblings agreed, rallying around a commitment to strengthen their presentation. They crafted everything together: statistics, emotional narratives about Grandma's wishes, and a business model that highlighted their vision. Through the process, revelations emerged. Jake discovered he had a knack for storytelling. Filling their framework with personal anecdotes helped enrich their project's emotional weight. Emma revealed an impressive talent for design, crafting mock-ups and promotional materials that embodied their shared mission. And Lucas, despite his cautious nature, displayed an innate ability for financial logistics, absorbing knowledge from online courses and financial advisories to solidify their funding strategy. The trio was evolving, weaving their disparate talents into a cohesive tapestry of ambition. As they rehearsed, inevitable anxieties bubbled beneath the surface, amplifying the stakes of their endeavor. When the moment came to present to their father, the gravity of the confrontation loomed larger than any pitch meeting they had prepared for. "Are you ready for this?" Lucas asked, as the three stood in front of the family's dining table, which had been commandeered as the makeshift presentation stage. Jake inhaled deeply, a mix of determination and doubt twisting in his gut. "Ready as we'll ever be," he muttered. But just as they steeled themselves for the imminent confrontation, a text flashed on Jake's phone. A familiar name caught his eye, someone from their past, someone who could potentially help them realize their dreams. Jake's heart raced. Would this connection offer a lifeline or further complicate their attempt to step into the light? The answer loomed heavy in the air, and they had yet to march into the heart of their father's skepticism. As he closed the message, he felt the tides turn within him. newfound courage sparking in his core. This wasn't just about their dreams anymore. It was a gateway to self-discovery, to challenging everything he'd believed he could achieve. And as they gathered strength to face Edward, a new question brewed in Jake's mind. How deep would their resolve be tested in the shadows of doubt, and would their journey reveal unexpected alliances? The air thickened with a silence heavy enough to swallow any lingering doubt. Jake could almost feel the weight of his father's skepticism pressing against him as they prepared for the pitch. That familiar family table, the battleground for so many past discussions, had become their strategic launch point, yet it felt more like a crucible this time. Jake cast a furtive glance at Emma and Lucas, both of them tapping into a wellspring of unspoken energy. Focus, palpable. Each sibling embodied a piece of their shared history, yet they now stood as individuals bolstered by purpose. "Before we start," Jake ventured, his voice steadying with each syllable, "let's remind ourselves why we're doing this." He felt a surge of responsibility toward them. This project isn't just about proving Dad wrong, it's about honoring Grandma's legacy. Emma's gaze softened, and Lucas scoffed. "If that's the case, we better make this count." With Emma's confident nod and Lucas's cautious enthusiasm, Jake flipped open his notebook filled with scrawled ideas and visions. It almost felt like alchemy, the merging of past wishes with their ambitions. The pitch began like a slow burn, with Jake delineating their vision for the café, blending history, community, and creativity. Each detail was infused with their grandmother's essence, and he surprised himself with how easily the words flowed. He was no longer just a hesitant son. He was a storyteller carving out space for a dream. As they progressed through the statistics and emotional narratives, Jake watched his siblings shine. Emma's designs sprang to life on the screen, showcasing a café that felt both inviting and innovative. Lucas's meticulous financial plan seamlessly tied together their aspirations, showcasing not just viability, but the potential for real impact. It was magic. They were all discovering facets of their capabilities that had lain dormant. "How do we get people to believe?" Jake asked, imploringly. Lucas leaned forward, his eyes alight with an unexpected fervor. "It's the story, man. You convey why this matters, not just the numbers." "Exactly," Emma interjected, shifting into a passionate cadence. "People want to feel that this is more than just a business. It's about connection." With that understanding, their pitch morphed, became less about statistics and more about relationships, about community, qualities their father would never fathom could lead to success. As they wrapped up, Jake caught sight of his father standing at the entrance, arms crossed and expression inscrutable. The moment felt suspended in time, a cliffhanger just before the plunge. Jake's heart raced. Would his father see the truth or the illusion of their vision? "Dad," he began, summoning every ounce of courage, "this is our vision. We want to create a place where people can connect, learn, and grow, just like Grandma dreamed." He paused, feeling vulnerability cascade over him. "We're not asking for your approval. We're sharing this with you because it's important to us." Edward's brows furrowed, clearly caught off guard. "You think this is just some romantic notion? You're all bound to fail?" A wave of frustration rippled through Jake, the kind that ignited his determination rather than quelled it. "Maybe, but it's ours to fail, and we owe it to ourselves to try." The tension crackled like static electricity. Their father's dismissal felt like a trap, yet Jake sensed an opening within it, an opportunity for a confrontation that could reshape their future. "What do we have to lose if we try?" Emma's voice wavered as she challenged their father's
authority with quiet strength. As the words hung heavily in the air, Jake felt the pull of destiny. This wasn't merely about securing support. It was a pivotal moment steeped in the risk of redefinition. They were carving out an identity, claiming ownership over their aspirations. In that charged atmosphere, Jake pondered, what would it take to turn their father's disbelief into support instead? And how would his response direct their next steps? Navigating the complexities of kinship and ambition would only deepen their resolve, and it was time to discover the boundaries of their family dynamics. With that, Jake's intent crystallized. It was not merely about what they wanted to build, but also what they stood to learn, and what relationships needed mending in the process. Was Edward waiting on the brink of acceptance, or was this collision course destined for deeper fractures? The potential of both despair and revelation awaited them, turning their already perilous journey into something unprecedented. Jake fought to keep his composure as he watched his father's expression shift from disbelief to something more complex, perhaps curiosity or concern. The silence stretched taut around them, a thin rope pulled tight, ready to snap. Each sibling's breath felt shared. There was electricity in the air, crackling like impending thunder. "Dad," Jake said, his voice carrying the weight of uncertainty and determination, "we're not looking for a handout. We want to show you that we can do more than replicate what's come before us. It's time for us to redefine success." Edward frowned deeper, an architectural pallor settling in his features. Jake could practically hear the internal dialogue racing through his father's mind. What do they know? Can they really pull this off? "Redefine success?" Edward echoed, eyebrows arching skeptically. "Success is about stability, not dreams. It's about running a business people want, not one they think they need." With each word, Jake felt a shiver run down his spine. His father's dichotomy between pragmatism and passion was stark, but Jake was determined to transcend it. "We can marry both, Dad," he asserted, emboldened by a wave of conviction. "We can be grounded in reality while still pursuing passions. The key is showing people that this café can inspire them, honor Grandma's memory, and be profitable." Emma stepped forward, her designer dreams no longer just abstract ideas. "What if we created a space where local artists could exhibit their work, or hold workshops to teach skills? It's community engagement that brings in customers, not just good coffee." Jake felt admiration swell within him, watching her articulate the vision. She was the embodiment of connection, and Lucas's meticulous strategy laid the groundwork they so desperately needed. "Exactly," Lucas chimed in, directing their father's attention to the financial projections. "If we host events and classes, there's a potential revenue stream that doesn't just rely on foot traffic. It diversifies income and engages the community, much like Grandma would have wanted." Overwhelmed by the flood of ideas, Jake almost missed the subtle shift. The slightest reprieve from rigidity. Was there a crack in his armor? "Just talking about community doesn't mean business will follow," Edward replied slowly. But Jake could sense a hint of vulnerability beneath the cold exterior. "What if it does?" Jake challenged, emboldened by his siblings' unwavering faith in their vision. "What if we take that risk? What if we take the leap together? You might discover we're more capable than you think." In that moment of connection, Jake felt the burgeoning potential between them. The anecdote of their grandmother, ingrained in every corner of their pitch, reached out to break through the barrier. But, deep within him, Jake grappled with existential fear. Was he truly ready to risk his family's legacy because of a dream? He felt a conflict stir, the tumult of ambition countered by the weight of expectation. "We all have something to prove, Dad," he continued, staring deep into his father's eyes. "But it's more than just business. It's about family, our lineage, transforming what's been to what could be." Just then, a flicker of something, a recognition, a spark of hope passed over Edward's sharp features. What happened next, though, changed everything. With a decisive nod, their father shifted his posture. "Fine. If this means that much to you, I'll consider your proposal. But you'll need a tangible plan, one that includes your mother and me. You have 1 month." The challenge hung like raw meat before a pack of wolves, igniting a rush of adrenaline through Jake's veins. A weight had shifted, yet more turns lay before them, fraught with complexity and urgency. With exhilaration mixing with apprehension, Jake turned to Emma and Lucas. They nodded, resolve mirrored in their eyes. 1 month. They had the opportunity, the nudge they needed, but the clock was ticking. With their father's challenge looming like a giant shadow, intensity pulsed through their collective ambition. But what will it take to convert this support into unwavering belief? Jake thought, steely determination igniting his will. As they began to strategize, the walls of their familial expectations felt both daunting and surmountable. The first step had been taken, but with disruptive uncertainty in every layer, Jake knew they were standing on the precipice. As excitement rose and plans were forged, a stranger feeling wrapped itself around him, an invitation to explore depths of ambition he had yet to uncover. What new revelations about their own identities awaited them as they approached the deadline? Jake sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by drawings, financials, and hastily scribbled ideas. Those papers now represented a blend of ambition, creativity, and responsibility. Each sibling brought their unique strengths to the table, and Jake felt the weight of their collective aspirations. "Let's focus on the experience we want to create," Emma suggested, her finger tracing the outline of her design for the café. "It has to feel vibrant, a place where people want to linger." Jake recognized the shift in her tone. The idea that had once felt like a distant dream now thrummed with reality. "We need to define our identity clearly," he added. "What do we stand for? What do we want our brand to reflect?" Lucas adjusted his glasses, leaning in. "How about making it a space for collaboration? Art displays, local authors reading their work, pop-up shops for small businesses. We signify local togetherness." His voice was steady, thought out, and Jake could see the fire of conviction in his brother's eyes. As they plotted out the next steps, Jake's mind raced through the meeting with their father. Would his plan meet the standards of a man whose view of success was steeped in years of tradition and stability? It was an anxious thought. Developing a model that balanced innovation and prudence would be no small feat. "Okay," Jake said, steadying his voice. "We should outline a draft business plan and set specific financial goals. We'll need to show Dad not just what we want to build, but how it will sustain itself." "Break down the startup costs first," Emma stipulated. "Can we get some donations or partnerships with local artists and businesses?" "Already on it," Lucas confirmed, scribbling down ideas. "But we might need some cold hard figures for those discussions." Each suggestion sparked new ideas, heightened competition among them. It had become undeniable. Something greater was growing within their trio. With the proposal in mind, Jake took on the role of the strategist. He began to visualize the various components of their café, a place that would weave the past with the future. He pushed away the creeping doubts each time he started to think about their father's expectations. Instead, the exhilaration of possibility bubbled to the surface.
At night, Jake found himself lying awake, replaying conversations with his father in his mind. What if Edward scraped the proposal away as fanciful illusions? What if he couldn't navigate the labyrinth of their father's skepticism? The fear of failure clashed against a burgeoning self-belief. Every decision now felt magnified. Their father had begotten a legacy that Jake had to wrest back into his control while redefining it. The weight of his family heritage draped over him like a woolen blanket, heavy and suffocating. Yet, within, came the realization. It wasn't merely about appeasing their father. This was about them, about him. He was rediscovering a passion that extended beyond the expectation of legacy. He was awakening parts of himself he had long subdued. As days progressed, the café started to take on a life of its own in their discussions, emerging as a tangible entity filled with aspirations and dreams. They sketched tables, rearranged menus, conceptualized events, all with fervor and tangible excitement. Sitting back as his siblings continued pitching ideas, Jake felt a surge of clarity. This wasn't merely a café, it was a canvas for who they were together. A realization washed over him. He could be the architect of his own vision while honoring family history, a fusion of reverence and innovation. After a long day's work, Jake caught Emma's eye from across the table. "We'll impress Dad," he stated with rising confidence. Together, they would reunite the legacy. In that moment, Jake decided that if they wanted to succeed, they weren't just going to woo their father. They would redefine what it truly meant to be a part of this family and to run this business. As the clock ticked closer to the deadline, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. Uncertainty was inevitable. Who would be willing to test the waters with him outside of the familial embrace, potentially risking everything? Those questions echoed louder as he nestled deeper into his dreams. What lies ahead as the days pass and the proposal draws near? What vulnerabilities would Jake and his siblings need to confront to prove their vision stands worthy? Jake stared at the blank page in front of him, ideas swirling in his mind but refusing to settle. The initial excitement about their proposal had morphed into a quiet dread. He knew they needed a solid plan, something that could withstand and perhaps even impress their father. But how could they package their vibrant café concept into a business plan that resonated with someone whose values were anchored in tradition? He rose from the kitchen table, feeling the walls closing in. A walk would clear his head, he thought, as he grabbed his jacket. Outside, the crisp air bit against his skin, forcing him to focus on the immediate world around him. He passed by the local park where children played and joggers chatted, and with each step, the scene reminded him of the community they wanted to foster. Maybe, just maybe, he could weave those daily experiences of connection into their business narrative. Jake's phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking his reflective drift. It was a message from Lucas with a photo attached, a snapshot of a cafe in the city known for its eclectic style and vibrant atmosphere. The caption read, "Maybe we can draw some inspiration from this." Looking at the image, Jake studied the details. The mismatched furniture, artwork from local artists, shelves lined with books. It was alive with the essence of collaboration. Could they extract that feeling? A thought flickered in his mind. "It's not just a cafe, it's a community hub," he muttered under his breath. As he returned home, energy coursed through him. The cafe was a living entity in Jake's mind now, and it needed to resonate with purpose. Rejoining Emma and Lucas at the table, their voices momentarily fell silent, eyes turning to Jake, anticipating his thoughts. "I think we need to showcase how this cafe goes beyond serving coffee and pastries. It's a platform for local artists and creators. We tap into their stories. It's about their contributions to our community," Jake proposed, feeling excitement rise within him. Emma nodded, her enthusiasm rekindled. "Exactly. We can include artist spotlights in our marketing, weaving together narratives of local talent." Jake could sense a shift in atmosphere as Lucas leaned forward, envisioning the potential. "And we can host events like open mic nights or gallery walks. Our space becomes a canvas for others to express themselves. The trio dove into it, mapping out events, lining up potential partnerships, brainstorming creative outreach. Scripted fear ebbed away, replaced with an intoxicating blend of purpose and vision. Jake felt himself unlocking parts of his creativity he thought long dormant, like a rejuvenated spark lighting a fire. As they worked, Jake's mind drifted to his father's expectations again. Each idea came packaged with the weight of doubt. Their father was known to dismiss untried ventures. Would he see this cafe as a frivolous deviation from the family legacy? The thought snagged at him, pulling him momentarily back into apprehension. "What if he doesn't see the potential?" Jake said, the question escaping before he could rein it back in. Emma met his gaze. "Remember, this is our vision. We've fought hard for this. If we believe in it, we can convince him." Jake swallowed, absorbing her confidence. "Right. We've got to embody our vision. Show him we're grounded, but also inventively different." Suddenly, a realization surged through him. It wasn't just the proposal that mattered, it was the conviction behind it. This was about staking their claim as equal partners in a legacy. The cafe was not to eclipse their heritage, but to redefine it, an evolution rather than a rebellion. As they wrapped up for the evening, excitement simmered under the surface. However, a looming sense of responsibility shadowed Jake. What would that confrontation with their father entail? The worry festered in the back of his mind, the stakes suddenly feeling excruciatingly real. He sketched out the next steps in his mind. Presenting their idea effectively would require clarity, confidence, and perhaps the most critical of all, authenticity. Jake had to face the impending conversation head-on, but he also had to confront another layer of vulnerability, the realization that he was stepping out of the shadows. As preparations intensified, he questioned, what if his father's reaction was a mirror, reflecting Jake's own doubts back at him? How would he find his footing in that conversation, amidst the tension of personal heritage and budding dreams? The clock continued its relentless ticking as Jake prepared. He wondered how much was too much to reveal about his hopes and fears. Would they risk everything to claim their identity, even if it meant facing the unknown? The moment of truth lay ahead, and like a tightrope walker above, Jake felt the tension of uncertainty pulling at his core. Would he be able to balance between the expectations of the past and the aspirations of the future? The morning light filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow on the scattered notes and sketches covering the table. Jake sat down, coffee in hand, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. Today was pivotal. He had been wrestling with his thoughts, finessing the pitch that would ultimately determine how their father could perceive their vision. It wasn't just wordsmithing. It involved encapsulating their intent, their drive, into confounding resistance. Okay, so what exactly do we present first? Emma's voice broke through his reverie, her eyes bright with expectation, her fingers confidently tapping the table. Let's start with the heart of the cafe, how it serves as a stage for creativity, Jake replied, recommitting himself to clarity. We'll emphasize the story of community-driven collaboration. It's not just about selling coffee, but nurturing relationships. Lucas nodded, his gaze focused. So the cafe's mission becomes our narrative. We weave that into every aspect, marketing, decor, and the experience. Jake leaned back, emboldened by their excitement, yet grappling with his insecurities. Exactly, but we need to frame it in a way that aligns with our father's traditional values. He's never granted favor to flippant ventures. We have to present this as grounded and responsible. Responsible? Emma echoed, her brow furrowing. You mean businesslike? Yes, he needs to see that we're taking this seriously. It must impress him, Jake suggested, the knot of doubt tightening in his stomach. Would analytical facts and revenue forecasts be enough to soften their father's traditional views? How could he inferably express that innovation thrives within the realms of responsibility? The afternoon loomed heavy as they refined their presentation. Jake throws in historical data on the art cafe trend and local market surveys, which would appeal to their father's figures-driven mindset. Yet, amid these preparations, a nagging voice within him questioned whether numbers alone could authentically convey their passion. Could they truly convey the pulse of their dream through lined graphs and pie charts? "Jake, are you okay?" Lucas's voice disrupted Jake's solitary contemplation. "You seem distant." "Yeah, just thinking about how to connect with him," Jake confessed, the tension of physical presence as he ran a hand through his hair. "His reaction will shape everything. It's like I'm trying to arm myself against a storm of his skepticism." Emma offered a gentle smile. "You've got to trust in your vision. You've always been good at reading the room. Show him it works. Show him what it means to us." At her words, a flicker of determination ignited in Jake. Perhaps their father's criticism stemmed from his own fears, a fear of losing control, of seeing the family legacy compromised. What if Jake could articulate that their vision didn't undermine the family business, but rather expanded it? As the clock ticked closer to the meeting, Jake practiced his speech in segments, pacing the room. The structure and key points almost became rote rehearsals, but failed to quiet the unease. Each pause reflected the responsibility of stepping into a confrontation against a legacy built on tradition and practicality. "Jake, remember," Emma suddenly interjected, "fear can twist into a lack of understanding. If he reacts harshly, try to see that as his confusion rather than outright dismissal." Jake nodded, her words grounding him. Perhaps understanding began each step forward, stepping out rather than back.
His own convictions juxtaposed against an inherited mindset. "You're right. This isn't just about him listening. It's about making him see who we are now, what we aspire to be." Yet, as evening approached and the tension built, Jake sensed the storm brewing within him. The moment drew near. All his meticulous planning danced on a precipice, holding his future by a thin thread of conviction. He lingered at the threshold of their father's office, heart racing. The stakes had escalated. Conversation with a man shaped by experience and behind those traditional walls needed all of Jake's resolve. With unwavering breaths, he gathered himself. Today, he would face not just his father, but the fragments of what he thought was expected of him. The door opened with a slight creak. Jake moved forward, mustering his resolve. But a thought snagged at him. Realization dawned that confronting their father would require as much honesty about himself as it demanded about the cafe's vision. Would he dare venture into those uncharted territories of vulnerability? Jake took a deep breath, ready to confront the shadows of long-held beliefs and the possibility of his own transformation. As the tone of the conversation shifted, the weight of their shared legacy settled on his shoulders, and his heart raced at the forthcoming challenge he never anticipated. The moment had arrived for his voice to be heard, but what would emerge from the other side? Jake inhaled deeply, steadying his breath as he approached the gathering place that would determine the course of their futures. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the lingering scent of paste and paint from Emma's designs, creating a calming assurance amidst the storm brewing in his heart. Today, he wouldn't just present another idea. He would demonstrate his evolution, his commitment to honor both the past and their ambitions. As he stood at the family dining table once more, surrounded by Emma and Lucas, he felt the collective tension vibrate in the air. This is it, he thought, his heart pounding with anticipation. The firm tap of the clock punctuated the stillness, each second pulling him closer to their impending confrontation with their father. "Let's remind ourselves why we're here today," Jake said, casting a reassuring glance at his siblings. "This isn't just a dream, it's a purpose. We want to create something that celebrates community, something that breathes life into our grandmother's legacy." Emma chimed in, her voice clear. "We're not just selling coffee. We're inviting people to share their stories, their art, their passions, creating a nurturing environment. This is our vision, and we truly believe it can succeed." Lucas flipped open the meticulously crafted business plan, the printed pages trembling slightly in his grip. "And we've shown through research that community spaces like this one thrive in today's economy. It's viable, and we're ready to take the challenge." With a shared nod, the three siblings cut through the silence like a shield. They had prepared every detail of their pitch, each filled with the passion that had grown from their newfound agency, binding them in a triumphant alliance. Yet doubt simmered beneath the surface as they approached the crucial moment. Then, Edward strode into the room. The atmosphere thickened instantly, his presence like a storm cloud looming over a clear sky. Jake felt the acute tension between the vision he and his siblings had fostered and the expectations their father personified. "Let's see what you have," Edward barked, crossing his arms. With a deep breath, Jake stepped forward, remaining resolute as he grasped the edges of the table, feeling it anchor him. "Dad, thank you for meeting with us. We've poured our hearts into this project, and we want to share our vision for a community cafe inspired by Grandma's dreams." The first few moments felt precarious, but with each word, Jake felt stronger. He began to articulate their concept, not just as a business, but as an experience, weaving in stories of local creatives, community engagement, and mutual support. "We envision an inviting space for gatherings, art classes, and local displays. We want to foster connections among people who share our values, just as Grandma wanted us to," Jake asserted, allowing them all to shine in their respective strengths of design, finance, and narrative. As he spoke, he saw a flicker of interest in Edward's expression, the harsh lines of skepticism momentarily softening. Yet the businessman in Edward emerged, fixated on the numbers. "You think this can succeed? What's your backup plan when interest wanes?" he countered, arms still crossed, but with a hint of curiosity. Jake took a step back to allow his siblings the floor. Emma launched into the marketing strategy, while Lucas hoisted the financial projections, showcasing the ways they planned to not just weather the storm, but thrive in it. With each point they made, Jake felt a weight lifting. They were no longer children trying to meet their father's expectations. They were a team, a brand embarking on a journey forged from hope, creativity, and a desire for autonomy. As they wrapped up their proposal, Jake sensed the path before him softening like the morning fog. This was their crystallizing moment. "Dad," he addressed Edward, his voice steady yet vulnerable, "we're asking for your support not just as our father, but as a partner in this journey. We genuinely believe we can redefine our legacy together." The silence that followed felt endless. Then Edward inhaled sharply, as if weighing the enormity of what had just been proposed. Jake held his breath, waiting for the verdict that could shatter or uplift their dreams. At last, Edward released a sigh, his brows knitting together as if reconciling disparate ideas. "You really think you can pull this off?" he murmured, uncertainty etched between his lines of age, but softened by the hint of pride. "Yes," Jake replied, pulse quickening with an unexpected rush of assurance. "We can, and we're committed to this. It's time we step into our own."
Vision. Together. Moments elapsed. Shadows danced around them. Jake felt a swelling within the atmosphere, a shift toward possibility. Edward glanced between his children, evaluating the resolve etched on their faces. Finally, he nodded, the shift in his demeanor lifting the heaviness that had bound them for so long. "You have 1 year," he stated firmly, eyes flickering toward the proposal. "Prove to me this can work, and I'll support you, but you must show me results." The relief washed over Jake as he shared a triumphant glance with his siblings, who mirrored his confidence. In that moment, standing on the precipice of their aspirations, Jake felt transformed. He had not only confronted his father, but redefined his identity in the process. They were artistic creators, ambitious entrepreneurs, the true heirs to their grandmother's legacy. This culmination of resolve confirmed that he was no longer just living for approval, but charting his own course, ready to conquer the challenges that lay ahead. With laughter and shared excitement echoing in the room, they gathered around the table, unified in purpose. Today was just the start. They had embraced the spirit of their dreams and emerged stronger, ready to step into a bright future rooted in authenticity and passion. As they dove into the celebration of their hard-earned victory, Jake made a silent vow. They would honor not just their grandmother's legacy, but carve out their path, a legacy that reflected their true selves. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.